Checklist.io.
Hello everyone, and welcome back for another episode of You Deserve Fresh Lettuce, a podcast between two friends about divorce and thriving after divorce. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Delia. Welcome.
Welcome to the show. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the red flags that we've sort of seen in hindsight, right? Because you don't always know once you see them, but this is the red flags of when you're dating. So when you're dating, there are red flags that we don't necessarily understand.
Or we ignore.
Yes,
of course.
Until
they become, until they stab you. And the red flags are
bash in the eyes.
You're like, I saw the red flag. No. Yes. I agree, yes.
We have coffee that we sip throughout the show, but we also have tequila because sometimes some of the things we talk about require
a little bit more. Not to
courage.
say that you need a drink.
No.
But if you should, we enjoy a good tequila.
We understand the tequila moment.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, I needed that one.
So welcome back. I guess I will get started with this one. Basically, I was a teen wife. And a teen mom. So I'm coming to you from the perspective of young love.
Right.
And really not knowing anything. Like whatsoever.
Like I think most of the things you probably saw like on Disney movies, which are a complete fraud. I mean, without having to call Disney out. I'm not trying to get sued, but it's a complete fraud.
Damn that Cinderella.
I know. You're like, I thought Prince Charming. Yes.
You just have these ideas. And really, when you're young, I don't know that you really know what to expect.
I don't think so.
You just know what feels good.
Right.
And it's like, your boyfriend. It just feels good. And so I had a lot of red flags when he was my boyfriend because of the things with the girls.
Right.
And so there would just be, I lived in a different city. And so for my experience, I got to see that there would be like this random girl situation, or somebody would say, hey, I saw him with his ex-girlfriend. And then I would say, hey, is it true that you're with your ex-girlfriend? And he'd say, oh, she can't really let go of me. And I felt bad because she was crying.
Of course.
And there was that whole thing. And so for me, like looking back, I realized, no, that's not true. That's not okay. It wasn't true, for one. Right. And it's not okay. So this episode, we're just going to talk about red flags.
Absolutely. Well, for me, I'd like to begin from my history. It's really simple. I, started dating what is now my ex-husband, but he proposed. 65 days later. So, I mean, you don't really get a chance to know someone. And obviously, he wanted to hide who he really was.
He must have known. Yeah, so, that was like a move.
I mean, it was beyond a move. And I remember, because Rachel always says that, her therapist told her, in order to actually know a man, you have to date him for how long?
Okay, so he said 2 years before you walk down the aisle.
Because you get to see who he really is before the 2 years.
Yeah.
So I am super young. I'm not as young as you. You're a teenager. Yeah. I'm pretty young. 65 days later, I'm getting proposed to. I can't believe it. And a year to the date, I'm walking down the aisle. So whatever red flags were being tossed at me, I guess I just was preparing for a wedding.
Yeah, you're like planning a wedding.
Yeah, I'm like not gunshot though. It wasn't like I was pregnant. It was just, because it's a typical thing that, however you do it. But point of the matter is that 65 days later, I mean, I saw the red flags coming. And I remember that the day that I was walking down the aisle, something told me, don't do it. Don't do it. So that means I saw all the red flags.
You knew.
And you already know. I'm wearing the perfect color. Yes, I already knew. But what do you do?
On my wedding day, I was at a hotel. We got married in Vegas.
Okay.
And I was in the big suite, and it was like floor to ceiling glass. And I was, and he
don't tell me you're gonna jump off the
glass.
Okay.
No. And he was in Vegas. They like have his show, right?
Yeah.
So he was I don't know in another room or something getting ready, and so I was like in my dress. I hadn't done my hair yet. I did my makeup, but I hadn't done my hair, and I'm standing there at the glass, and I'm looking out at the strip, and I am just bawling, like tears are just coming down, and it all hit me at once. that I knew I'm not supposed to do. This is
not
the way. Like, I should
yeah.
not be doing this. And maybe, you know, it could have been a little bit of cold feet. A lot of people feel, you know, like wedding jitters or whatever. I was like, not afraid. I was sad for myself. I was like, oh God, this is a mistake.
That's even the worst.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've read a lot of different articles, and obviously I love to read on these types of things. A lot of the time, the people that get married, if you talk to them, they will tell you that they knew that they shouldn't do it. But I think it's already like everything's already coming together. It's a commitment already. Maybe invitations already sent out. Your family has flown from different countries to come and witness this, you know, this train wreck that's about to happen. And while you're going through the motions, because there's a lot that goes into planning a wedding, even if you elope. I mean, there's a lot that goes into all of those things that the red flags are coming at you. And what do?
And that's why, so this family counselor guy that I went to after my divorce, because I was like, you know, we talked in an earlier episode about really doing the work on yourself and getting yourself ready. And so as soon as I left my marriage, I went right into work mode, like figuring myself out so that I could alleviate this baggage and really kind of go through life a little bit better than I did. I didn't want to like come out worse than I went in. I really wanted to get myself together. And so in that, he said to me, now when you go into the next relationship, which is a little bit of like a curse too, because it's made me so cautious. He said, you know, make sure you do not walk down that aisle before the 2 years. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you probably, because I was, you know, I'm of a certain age. It's probably going to be a very quick engagement because men are like, once they know, they want to hurry up because
let's just get it done.
They, you know, you like all the dating and all the stuff, but they want to like, when you're older, they just want to get it done. Like they want to get back to like sitting on the couch, kicking their feet up while you're like cooking. Right. Because the ring to them is like, do my laundry, cook my meals, like you know,
belong to me.
Yeah, like when they're older. So I was like, okay. So he said the reason why is because no one can fake it for 2 years. He said, if you do it for 1 year, you're going to make a lot of excuses for the person. But if you stick it out for 2 years, no one can fake it for 2 years.
So I'd like to tell you that the irony of it is that we are here before you guys as You Deserve Fresh Lettuce. The man that actually kind of enlightened me with the I Deserve Fresh Lettuce, I dated him for a little over a year. And I didn't see those red flags coming until after a year. So imagine, initially, it's like the honeymoon stage, right? It's the state of newness where you're like, but I love him. And then you see something and you ignore it and then you forgive it. And you're like, it's okay. It's not, or maybe he calls. He doesn't show up at the time he's supposed to. You have dinner reservations. Guess what? You got to maybe alter and do something different because he's not coming through. And then after a while, the little things that bothered you, the red flags that we're talking about, then become maybe deal breakers. And that's when the fresh lettuce is no longer on the plate because they just don't care to give it to you.
You know, because you do treat people how to treat you. You teach people, I should say.
It's so true.
How to treat you. And so things like that. You have to really understand the things that bother you in the beginning, they're going to drive you absolutely nuts.
They're going to be highlighted.
Later.
They're going to like highlight those
it's
things.
going to be like engraved in your day to day. And the things that you think are really cute right now, they might turn out to be the things that you can't stand about the guy later.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it's so hard because there's no right way to pick, to be honest. Like,
that's true.
I don't think there's actually a way to truly know besides to follow your heart. I mean, I raised 2 young little boys, my babies, into men, and even they were like, I don't know, and I'd say, you know, at the end of the day, you got to like follow your heart, because if I used too much of my intellect, I would have never got married in the first place. So you have to listen to your heart as well. But the red flags, oh my gosh, are they there? So we're here to share some of the red flags with you that we saw, so that maybe if you're in that early dating stage, you can start to understand that what's actually serious.
Right.
And what's just like not that serious.
Right, like just kind of throw it under the rug. But then, you know, that mountain might trip you.
Yeah.
You know, when you're walking through the door, it's like, okay, wait a minute, that now became a mountain.
Yes.
So that's going to be an issue.
Yeah. So what do you have a red flag that in hindsight, whether it's during your marriage or even dating, that we can give to the audience now?
Well, for me, I feel like I know that there's things that happen, there are things that are going to come up and they're going to happen. But if the person's really flaky, believe me, they're only going to get flakier. That means, like, if you have dinner reservations at 9 o'clock and it's 9:30 and it's 10 o'clock, I'm sorry, I got caught up. Okay, that could happen once or twice. But after a while, is the person just not punctual or just doesn't care? Because my time is just as valuable as his time.
Yeah.
And I had to make time to see him too.
And to get ready.
And to get
dolled up and that whole thing.
And whatever it is, if you have children like I do, and, kind of figure out what the logistics of that's going to look like. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's one of pretty big red flags in my opinion. Or says they're going to call and they don't call. Yeah. Like no call, no show. It's kind of like a job, right?
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, how is this possible? You can call no show. What are your thoughts?
No, that's just disrespectful.
It is totally disrespectful. What are your thoughts, Rachel, as far as red flags?
I think
other than that one.
I think that the way when you have an emotion,
right,
how they help you manage that emotion. So if they're the type of person like, oh my God, you're just overreacting.
Or you want to minimize your feelings.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like maybe that's it. Like if you feel sort of reduced, like your emotions aren't as important,
right.
But maybe for them when something happens in their life,
they want you
everything
to
has to stop
everything.
And like focus on them. But if something's happening to you, they're like, you'll be fine, you'll get over it. You have to understand that that's okay. Like I'm not a person that needs a ton of coddling when I'm going through something. But if you're a person that needs a little bit more empathy and nurturing, understand that tendency gets stronger.
I agree.
Like it gets stronger later, and it might even turn into when you're going through real life situations.
Right.
That they're just going to be focused on their own.
It's like not everything's about you.
Yeah.
And so we go through. We're emotional beings, as it is. Females, we are emotional beings. I mean, it just depends on what time of the month you catch us on, right? I mean, let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
Let's be straightforward. Yes. It just depends on what time of the month you catch us on. And so for the most part, our emotions can go up and down. But I think it matters on how you actually have someone that kind of understands you and says, okay, maybe she's going through something, and vice versa too.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going through something too, because we're human beings. We go through things on a day-to-day basis. But I do feel that, there are red flags that kind of start to pop up, and you're like just dodging them. You're like, no, I just don't want to see that.
Especially if you have never been married, you've never had kids, maybe you're 30. Maybe you're 35.
Right.
We get it. We understand. Even though we were married young and we had our husbands and we had our kids, and we've been there, done that. For me, I always say, if I never get remarried again, I'm going to be okay, because I had my family, I had my, you know what I mean? I've been there, done that. But for you, we understand there's plenty of women that have never been there and done that, and there's going to be a lot that you're going to be willing to just look away from, just to get the wedding. And
well, I think a lot of the people will live on this timeline, so they think that there's a timeline that you have to live your life, and it's like, by this time I got to be here and there and there. And even if the red flags, like you said, even if the red flags are flying at you, you want to walk down that aisle and have the white dress on and have everyone celebrate you. But believe me, when you actually like think about it, and you actually go through the wedding and then you go through the divorce, that's another animal. That's another animal.
It is. So I think, one of the things would be like to really ask yourself, what are you most in love with?
Right.
The person? Is it how they made you feel, or is it like the wedding? Because depending on what stage in your life you're in, because you're seeing people getting engaged, people in their 20s doing it. I know for my sons, they were seeing, their friends, already having babies and, already popping the question and stuff like that. And they were starting to think like, okay, so what?
I'm getting left behind.
Are we waiting too long? But they were just being more decisive about what they wanted. They're being more cautious, and they wanted to make a really strong decision for themselves instead of rushing in. But at the end of the day, just pay really close attention to what your needs are, but also understand when you come into a relationship, just because we're the woman or whatever, they're not here to like answer to our beck and call. Like they're not here to serve all of our emotions. That's what we're going to talk probably every episode about, really finding your own peace and figuring out how to create your own joy.
I agree.
And manage your emotions, and then they come in and they compliment you.
Right.
But what we don't want for you is that
it's like the balancing act.
It's a balancing
act.
act.
You just kind of know how to balance that out.
And if you could figure that out early on, even with just a dialogue.
Right. What I will tell you, Rachel, in my opinion, I feel that there are things like when you're in a relationship with someone where it's like, if I have to tell you how you need to be a man, you don't have to tell me how I need to be a woman. But if I have to continuously tell you how you need to act, then at that point I either decide that I want to become a nag, because if I have to tell you once, 2 times, after the 3rd time, it's not really you asking, now you're nagging. So now at that point I need to make the decision, do I allow that? Or do I just say, you know what, it's not going to work because that's a deal breaker for me. And you're not going to change that, and I'm not willing to accept that. So therefore, you know what, it's probably best that we call it quits here. And you do you and I do me, and that's okay. So I always think, like, is that a deal breaker? Because there's things that, you know, if the person's flaky and they continue to be flaky, guess what? The likelihood of them leaving you with dinner or leaving you
with the kids or whatever,
it's probably going to be more than likely. And at that point, you have to make a decision: is this a deal breaker? Or do I want to be a nag?
No, you're absolutely right.
That's not my legacy.
No, you know what I mean. And like my grandma, oh my gosh, I'm going to be talking about her a lot because I've learned so much from her. But she used to say that you teach a man basically how to treat you, like you train them. In her words, it was like you train them,
like they're dogs.
But what Delia's saying, but like what you're saying, what Delia's saying, it makes so much sense, because at the end of the day, you also want to understand that if you're expressing kindly and respectfully, you know, I was thinking about the other day when I asked you if you could whatever, and you just didn't do it, and you know, I noticed that it's like a pattern, and I just want to know how, you know, it kind of makes me feel, you know, maybe some kind of way. He might be like, okay, whatever, but really pay attention to the actions after you've communicated what it is that you need, or don't want.
Respectfully and nicely, of course, because the way that you ask, you know, I think, like, I want to believe that I always say, how did you deliver your package, right? Because the delivery is important. So I always tell people that know me, they say, well, how is your package being delivered right now? And it's like, it's probably broken at the door. Because that's because you're just not delivering correctly. Like, you have to, it's the way that you ask for things. You don't have to be mean about it. And you can literally tell somebody off without having to ever use a curse word. And just, you know, at that point, you have to make that decision. Is this a deal breaker? You know, I think this might be a deal breaker for me. And I'm okay. A lifetime is a short time. I'm out.
And you have to really understand that your happiness is key. It's important, and you have to figure out where you're willing to compromise. But, you know, if you're teaching someone how to treat you, you know, you have to communicate. These men are not mind readers.
Of course not.
And they don't do a good job at picking up cues, like the clues.
And I think sometimes we're bad at that, right? It's like, oh my God. I mean, I don't really want to celebrate the anniversary. But in reality, we as women are like, hello, where's my flowers?
Where's the freaking words in the sky that say, you know,
will you marry me again?
Yes. So we can't listen. We have, a piece of advice that I could give is like, don't expect him to be a mind reader. You're going to have to communicate. Because once it lands, he receives it, if he does nothing, that's a red flag.
That's your cue.
Once you've made sure you've communicated in a respectful, kind, peaceful way, genuine way, and if he continues to fail you in that area that you have basically determined is important to you.
Exactly.
That's a red flag. You're going to get way more of that once you get married.
And then, not to mention, after a while, you know, everyone kind of gets a little comfortable, and it's like, who cares? I mean, where are you really going to go? It's not like an actual breakup or boyfriend-girlfriend where you're like, you know, it's not going to work. And so now when you've built a life with someone, it's a little bit more difficult to say that's a deal breaker. Though it could be a deal breaker, you want to go around it and say, okay, what part of me can go around this without actually making an argument about this, or how can I go around that? But if you know it's going to bother you, believe me, once you get married, it's only going to be super highlighted, and it's just going to drive you nuts. So I think that, you know, once you start to see what the do's and don'ts, the likes, the deal breakers, what you do or do not want in your present, in your future, then you just kind of have to know how to separate that.
Yes, and I also think that people talk about the list, like making a list of the attributes you want.
Right.
I really think that list should be short.
You
I don't know
so?
in your opinion, because I know some people are like, oh, he has to be this tall and then this color hair and this color.
Don't you think it's funny how they're always like, he has to be tall, dark,
hands.
I don't know. I ended up with a short, dark Mexican guy. I guess I didn't really make my list and check it twice like at Christmas, but that wasn't the point,
Yeah, no. And so like you do, so the things with the list, it's like you have to also, when we talk about deal breakers.
Yes.
I always say this about like raising kids too. I would say don't have 100 rules.
True.
What are the main things that scare you the most? Is it like teen pregnancy? Is it like drugs and alcohol? Is it like jail or whatever? And then just figure out, like, to your kids.
Right.
Better not freaking go to, you know what I mean? You better not do this.
Better not.
These are the 3 things I'm going to worry about. Everything else I know is just being young, and I know I'm not going to stress. And that's hard to hear for parents.
Right.
But it's almost like that, I think, in relationships.
It's
because
true.
when I went and became a single woman, I made my list.
You did.
Mm-hmm. I made because I thought,
and do you think your list is long because you're still single 10 years later?
No, that's too long. It was long. And let me tell you,
I love that you made a list though.
No, yeah,
tell me what's on your list.
Listen, I ain't even putting my list out there. But like I made my list, and what I found was that as people stepped forward, I was like, ooh, is that really, do I have to have this? So I started realizing that I actually enjoyed this person's company. Maybe they weren't as attractive as I had wanted. But oh my gosh, they were so smart, they're really great with money, whatever it is, and I thought, this is good. Right. This is a good thing. So what I found over time, it wasn't settling.
Right.
I found that the true deal breakers revealed themselves over time, and I actually have very few.
Do you really?
Yeah. And so when we're talking about deal breakers, it's like you have to also realize and be sort of forgiving with yourself that it's okay, to have less deal breakers and just let some stuff slide.
I agree. I mean, there are things that, like the exterior, it's just very superficial in my opinion, right? So what the person looks like on the outside, I truly do believe, without sounding cliche, if the person is really an amazing soul, it's going to show. And then you will not even see the ugliness outside of him if he's ugly. Because I think there's always beauty in everybody.
Let me tell you something about Delia. I know you're looking at her, if you're watching this on YouTube, and seeing a beautiful woman. This woman is literally blind. Like, her love is blind. She doesn't even care.
I just think, like, everyone's beautiful. God made everyone beautiful, in my opinion. Without even sounding cliche, I think everyone has some type of beauty to them. It doesn't have to mean that they have like blue-green eyes that makes them beautiful. It's literally the way that you are. Like, you can't change that. If you're very superficially beautiful, that's one thing, but you can't change what is the mechanism inside.
Yeah.
That is something you cannot change. If you're just kind of wired up that way, and if you're wired up to be ugly, even if you're very good looking, you can't change that.
You can't.
Though I am saying that everyone has something beautiful about them. Again, maybe superficially they're very beautiful, but they're wired very ugly. And you know can't change that.
And this is probably a different whole other podcast, but like I think that maybe Delia, there's this thing that I call fun guys. So like mushrooms are like a fun guy, right? And
mushrooms,
and, like things that grow, like they're fungus, like fungus, things that grow on you, right? And so I always believe that like if you meet someone for the first time and you're not attracted to them,
right?
But then over time you become attracted to them because they're like, wow, okay,
this person's beautiful.
I then classify that guy as a fun guy.
Fun guy.
Because he grew on me.
No.
And let me tell you something.
How did you even come up with
that? Let me
that?
tell you something.
You don't like fun guys?
I don't stick it out with fun guys. I'm like, it's instant. Delia here apparently loves her fair share of fun because she truly is like looking at their soul and I'll see some of these guys and I'll be like, oh,
I would never really
think
about it.
And for me, I know for me, they're truly my chemistry and my attraction does come from how they look, how they smell, how they sound, how they dress.
I mean, that's really important. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to like a really dirty, ugly smelling man. I mean, you got to have a little bit of hygiene because I know I do. I want you to have some hygiene. Like, come on. But that's not the point. I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm going to sip some tequila on that one.
Cheers on that one. For the fun guys that you came up with this fun guy.
The fun guy.
I love it though.
If he grew on you, I feel like you can also grow away from him and you can grow uninterested in him.
Right.
And I do see a lot of relationships, women that are sitting in their homes and they're like looking at their husbands on the couch like, oh my
Well,
God.
I mean, I think, so I've had an experience like that myself where, you know, I dated someone and then it's like, oh, it's Sunday fun day on the couch. And I'm like, no, it can't be like that. I'm sorry. And I get it. And then it's like they're drinking Slurpees that are this big. And yes, I superficially do not see like the exterior and things are growing. And I take care of myself. So I want him to take care of himself. And it's not even about the aesthetics. It's about the heart. And it's about like staying active and having like this, you know, this whole common ground where we both can, you know, go on a hike and do things that are very like outdoorsy. But if the guy's just like, yeah, I got her, like, I don't even need to try.
And that's going to be a lot of the guys. So I love this one because if we're talking deal breakers, you have to understand that in the beginning, especially if you're older,
right?
These guys, they will whine you and dine you and take you here and take you there. And then here comes the proposal, like super early. They start talking about like marriage and this is all like after my divorce. And I know you had the same experience. And they start going down that road. Do you want more kids? How do you see? They're already like
they're already kind of laying it out,
down.
Or they're laying down the bricks.
Yeah, but I had a woman tell me years ago. This is when I was still married and I was young, and she got divorced when she was 40, and she said she had 7 different men propose to her within 6 months.
What?
And I remember thinking,
was she Jennifer Lopez?
No, I remember thinking like, she wasn't very attractive. You know what I mean? I remember thinking like, oh, okay. Wow. I didn't think she was very. I was like, okay. And I said, what do you think that is? Because I was like, oh, you know.
She's got money.
She said,
does she have money?
No, she had no position. But she said that it was because she learned that men of a certain age will do that because they do the whining and the dining and the trips on the back of the Harley or whatever she was into.
Okay.
And then it goes away. So she said she actually accepted 2 different proposals.
Did she really? Within 6 months?
Well, so the first one was 6 months, and then she said yes, and then that was, she said the dating stopped.
It was like, that's happened. Yes.
So then she called it off.
Right.
And then a year later or whatever, then she started with this other guy, and then 6 months or 7 months into that, he proposed, and she was like, okay. And then next thing you know, the dating stopped. So then that was the last proposal she had accepted because she learned something about herself.
What?
She likes the dating part. She likes the dating part.
And she was married for how long though?
Her first marriage was like 15 years.
Okay, so that was
so she realized, but then after that she was proposed to several times, and she realized, wait, these men are proposing to me because they're tired of dating. And she goes, but that's the part I love. She loves the trips to Palm Springs.
Thank God that she was able to see that red flag come out.
And she was able to, in the first proposal, to actually walk away. Wow. To say yes to the proposal and announce,
say no.
and then go no and walk away. And then she did it again and went no. And so many of us would not even say no after we set the ring.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't been engaged since my divorce, and the first one, 65 days in. That was scary, but I know that for sure.
That was like worse than 90 Day Fiance.
Right, I was. The funny thing about 90 Day Fiance is that I remember seeing the show and I thought, there's no way that people do that. That's ridiculous. I'm like, who even does the 90 Day Fiance?
Yeah.
And then I did the math. I'm like, hey Siri, blah 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 to blah blah. It's like 65 days. I was like, oh, I was even worse than the show.
I'm like 60 Day Fiance.
I'm like 65 Day Fiance. But my point to that is that if you know what the deal breakers are for you, really, that's what it boils down to. The red flags are a little bit of the flakiness, a little bit of everything else, plus what are your deal breakers?
And do you like
everyone has that.
The dating? So what are you falling for in this man? And and is it his intellect? Well, chances are he's going to have that forever.
Right.
Is it his sense of humor? He's going to have that probably
That's
forever.
the part of the wired part that I was telling you.
Yeah,
wired.
Is it his faith? Like, do you love the way he loves God? Chances are that's going to be there
really
forever. Important. Does he enjoy fitness? Like Delia, prefers a guy that keeps himself together, who's active. Like, what are his
I don't
interests?
like the Slurpee thing, It's like, because I have to keep him healthy. You got to keep me healthy. We got to keep each other healthy. But it's a lot of that. Like, how do we make each other better?
Yes. And, can you also accept some of the things he's interested in that don't relate to you? So, like, for example, I have a cousin, and she married a man who loves to go fishing. He has his fishing boat and he goes out all the time. That's time away from the family. You got to think he goes to work every day, and then there's like these fishing trips. Right. But guess what? For her, she's okay because she has her own hobbies. You know, she does things with the kids, and so there's certain things that you have to understand and be okay with. You have to say, okay, what is he doing to impress me during this dating? Yes. And what is he doing that he truly enjoys?
Right. And I think that's part of your identity, right? So this is part of my identity, and I don't want to part or veer away from it. So this is what, what I enjoy doing. And I think outside of a relationship, you still have to have your own, things that you do, whether that is going on hikes, whether that is going, bike riding, or if you like fishing, or whatever it is. Everyone has to have their own hobbies. Yeah. And it can't be where you guys are together 100% of the time, because everyone has to be, they have to have their own alone time. Yeah. And then that has to be on the list of deal breakers and red flags. Like, okay, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. That's a red flag,
And sometimes you're gonna meet a guy that he just wants to do everything you do. Right. And then it seems like
there's
cute.
a fun guy.
You know what I mean? Well, and then it seems like, oh, like that's so neat. Like he wants to do everything that I do. Over time, that will get worse, and it could manifest as like a very controlling, jealous personality.
It could, yes, it could.
And so you want to just kind of keep a pulse on what that is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, on what that is. Because I know with my ex-husband, I mean, everything I did, everywhere I went, that's where he wanted to be. And I remember getting my little job at first. I was working at Target in the evenings while I was going to college.
And would he want to visit you?
Well, what would happen was the workers would say, hey, Rachel, I think I saw your husband with your son in like aisle 5. And I'd go, what? And it'd be like 9 o'clock at night. And I'd go, no. And then I'd cruise the aisles or look at the security cameras, and then I'd see him. Wow. And I'd find out that he was there for like hours.
Oh.
And so it turned into this thing.
And so that never was creepy to you?
When he was my boyfriend, he used to do it. And I worked at Carl's Jr. when I was in high school, and I worked in some of the retail stores. And so I had different jobs and stuff like that after school, and then he would be like parked outside, but I wouldn't know. So the coworkers would say, hey, does anybody know who that guy is in that car out there? And at the time he didn't really have a car or drive. And then I'd look outside and go, what are you doing here? And I'd just say, well, just come in. I didn't really think much. I would think like, that's weird. Like, why wouldn't you tell me?
Or would you think that was sweet?
So my young self was like, that's super sweet. And so then throughout my marriage, I just thought that's just how he is. And
now you would think that's just creepy,
but
right?
Like my mom and other people are like, creepy. Why is he doing that? Yeah. And then after our divorce, I'm at the store, and next he's like standing looking through the window, and he's just following me. And till this day, I don't know. He might be outside right now. I don't even know. I know you got security cameras, but I've never been. Here's the thing for me. I've never been afraid. I've never taken it. I know other people saw that as like, oh my God. This is going to go bad.
But I wonder if the now Rachel, because see, the thing is that there's a part of their, we're obviously very naive, we're young, and we don't know any better. Do you think that now that has to be like deal breaker, creepy, red flag?
If a guy does that now, I mean, I'm 40 something years old, and that guy's 40 something years old. Yeah. Suddenly he's popping on all and hiding.
Yeah.
It's not going to be cute.
I would think,
your horror music has a Mexican accent. Oh my God. I mean, it's we're back to deal breakers, because I would have to sit there and go, oh gosh, because I would want someone who really obviously enjoys a lot of things that I enjoy, but I would want him to have things that he truly enjoys as well. And what I find with guys that are older, especially if they're very successful, they're very in love with their work.
Right.
And that's a thing too. You had a very successful husband. Yeah. And
I mean, there was the success part about it. But he wasn't in love where, he was gone, or he was flying out, or he was gone and he wasn't home. Like, he actually came home every night, and he actually, if it wasn't for the red flags that were popping up because of the way that he would act, I mean, really, there would be no other way to explain it. Because I know that there's people that I know personally that the husbands are always out
That's
on
true.
these like business trips. Like that was never the case. And I could tell you that if that was the case, if I had a relationship where red flags are popping at me and he's always on business trips, obviously that's indicative of possibly, you know, there's something else going on. But I do feel that obviously, you know, in order to live a certain lifestyle or to have certain goals, you have to put in the work.
Yeah.
So that's okay. But I mean, when does that become a deal breaker though?
That's
You
so
know?
that's the whole thing. It's like a lot of women want a man who is successful, okay? And it's a-okay. Some people say gold diggers. I don't believe in that.
I don't either.
I don't believe in that. I think that for centuries, women have been attracted to the breadwinner, to the hunter,
Right.
to the provider.
Even birds do it. If
Yeah,
you can believe
I
it.
mean, come on, it's in the
Yeah.
animal kingdom, it's everywhere. And so at the end of the day, I don't believe in the gold digger thing. However, if you do choose to pursue a man who is successful, who is like a big time business leader or whatever, there's a chance that that's the other person in the marriage.
Right.
That business could be what consumes him.
Right.
And then you just get the extras of him.
Right.
And
but if you're focused in your career and what you're doing also, then you understand that there's a hustle that goes from you to him, and then there's got to be that meeting point where it's like, okay, so on Friday night we're gonna go to dinner, but if it's at 8:00 we have reservations, and all of a sudden it's 10:00 and he's saying I'm not gonna probably make it, and then you accept that once, twice, 3 times, now it's a deal breaker because then now you're gonna become a nag.
I know that for me, that was something I had to really think about when I was dating a gentleman who was very, very successful, is till this day, and his own family was telling me, oh my gosh, we're so glad that you're in his life. We've actually done an intervention with him.
Wow.
To get him to find work-life balance because he's never been married, he's never had kids, but he wanted to have a family, he wanted to be married. And so here I was, the one that was finally sort of turning his head in that way and helping him round the corner. In the conversations I was having with him, I understood that he absolutely loved his career. He loved what he did for a living. And so for me, I didn't have it in me to say, but I want someone who can be with me.
Right.
Because I was in a stage of my life where it's like, I want to be able to blast off to Palm Springs for the weekend. I'm not raising little kids. Like, my life is in a different stage. And so I wanted someone that was available to that. And so I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, so am I just going to be sitting home on the weekends?
Right.
While he's just working all the time. And so
unless you wanted to get a side gig next to him, be like, well, can I get be your personal assistant at this point and spend time with him? Which you're probably,
And so I understood. Deal breaker for me was going into my next relationship. I am a cuddle bug. I like my partner. I like having a partner. I like having that time to be able to do things. And so I was able to walk away. Now people call me crazy for doing it. But I walked away. And so
because you've already been down that road, and then you're like, do I want to be down that road again?
Yeah. And I haven't been in a relationship where the person was gone all the time and super focused on work. I hadn't. I just knew that for me and my personality, I needed someone that could have a little more balance than that. Versus coming home, because the nature of his business would be like to end his day at midnight. Wow. And then it's like, okay, so you get him from like midnight to 3 a.m, and then he's back at it again.
Right.
And that to me wasn't a life.
And so that was a deal breaker.
And
that was a red flag.
And I was willing to walk away. And this is after my divorce, approaching 40, a lot of reasons, he was very successful, a lot of reasons to just say, hey,
who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah.
But I've chosen for my second chapter for it to be a little bit more enriching. Not the stalker thing.
Yeah, not to where he's going to be outside of the store. Yeah.
But also not where I'm sitting there 7 days a week and
by
I've
yourself.
only seen him like 6 hours.
You're in a relationship by yourself anyway. So at that point, it's a deal breaker. Why even be involved in a relationship? You might as well be alone.
Yeah.
I really do believe that there is a list, obviously. I have an written list. And I guess it boils down to having something that's really wired very beautifully. And so, but if you have a list and they don't check off the list, then obviously that should be your cue, your red flag, because obviously that's your deal breaker. And if that's your deal breaker, it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse.
It is.
It really, really is. I mean, it's going to be one of those things where now it's just going to be super highlighted unless you can just say, you know what, this is who he is and I accept him for who he is. Then you move on. Otherwise, it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, because love is a funny thing. Because love will pull you through things that you didn't think you can get through.
Exactly.
And love will pull you towards someone you didn't think you could choosing.
Right.
You know. And so at the end of the day, with the deal breakers, just know that love is still a factor. It's a wild card in there.
Right.
And you might get sucked in anyways.
I think because love, if you're loving someone that you're now allowing to be in your circle, that's conditional love. There's unconditional love, in my opinion, which would be like your parents, your children, you know, the people that I guess God chose for you. That's kind of more on the unconditional side because you accept them. They're part of your life. Now, the conditional love is a people that come into your life that you're like, I accept you. And these are the conditions. Though they're unwritten conditions, they're still conditions. Like, I think this is a deal breaker, that's a deal breaker. I love you, but I love myself a little bit more. And I know this is probably going to be the whole dead end again, where we're not going to move, you know, we're not going to continue steering forward. It's just a dead end. So I got to find another route here. So that's the red flag and that's the dead end.
I think so too. And so at the end of the day, you just have to understand some of them you might want to be able to compromise, but listen to those alarms that go off. You know, really evaluate your relationship and say, can I live for 50 years with this person chewing with their mouth open or whatever it is? You know what I mean? Like, it could be as simple as that.
And I mean, that's a deal breaker too. I mean, I've gone on dates with guys that are just like stabbing the steak and they're like, and I'm just like,
she's like, it's over.
I'm serious. And it's a little bit disturbing. I mean, I get it. And I'm not trying to sound rude, but it's a big deal only because if you are going to be going to dinners and be around people, I mean, that could be a deal breaker.
Yes.
If you tell him how he needs to hold the fork and knife and he's just still stabbing it like, you know, just being barbaric. Deal breaker. That's a red flag. Possibly if it's on your deal breaker list, you're like, ah.
Yes. So, you know, keep an eye on the red flags, meaning when they pop up, ask yourself first why you feel the way you feel about this.
Yes.
Because it could be something within you that needs to be worked out.
That's
not
true.
necessarily with the other person. Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So something... Oops. So if something comes up and it makes you feel some kind of way that's negative, you know, just do a little bit of a gut check. Just, you know, ask yourself, why does this trigger you?
Yes.
You might find that it's an issue with you, not necessarily with him. And then just kind of go through the process. But then a lot of it, you got to just follow your heart and take a leap of faith, because at the end of the day, so many of these relationships that have lasted forever, there wasn't a whole lot of thought put into it.
That's true.
Because you can go and you can choose someone with your mind, but if the heart isn't moved, you're in for a long, hard situation. So just keep that in mind.
Yep, and it's obviously better to be alone than in bad company.
Yeah.
So you might as well just kind of continue doing the work with yourself, and better to be alone than in bad company. That's what I always say. Yep. So that's all for us today. Yep. So hope you enjoyed our episode, and hope this helps you.
You know, at the end of every podcast episode, we do a mantra. We want you to join us at the very end to say the mantra with us. So stay tuned. Don't forget to follow us on social media at YDFL Podcast.
Father God, I ask that you bless me to understand that it's always darkest before the dawn, that your plans for me are bigger than my plans for me. I trust in you, Lord, that you will light and shine the path I was meant to be on. I am open to receive the blessings coming my way. I declare that I deserve respect. I deserve love. I deserve happiness. I deserve to feel beautiful, and that I deserve fresh lettuce.